Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Dojo Live this Wednesday, March 1st, if you can believe it or not, already March here. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be co-hosting today along with America Guerrero.
Hey, I cannot believe that it's March already.
It's March, I know. And today's guest is Brandon Afari, who is the co-founder of chargeFUZE, joining us all the way from snowy Los Angeles.
I know. Who would have thought those words would be put in one sentence? But yeah.
Right? A wild ride. And Brandon, thank you so much for joining us here today on Dojo Live. We're really excited to dive into chargeFUZE, how to hyperscale IoT businesses, and of course, to learn more about you, your story, and chargeFUZE's story.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go ahead and kick it off. You're welcome. Let's talk a bit about you. What is your story, your passion, and sort of what led up to co-founding chargeFUZE? Thank you.
Yes. So to kind of give you the quick snippet, entrepreneur at heart. I've been working just on innovative ideas since I was 17 years old. So innovation and new ideas is not something that I'm short of. But really, after going to USC for undergrad and grad school, I kind of dabbled into the whole corporate life. Worked at Deloitte for a little bit. Realized the corporate culture wasn't really for me, especially when you're a guy that just wants to innovate. Got involved in a few ventures kind of over the years, and really the way chargeFUZE came to be is 2018 there was this kind of accelerated growth in this whole IoT sharing economy space. So city bike and bird scooters and all these concepts were kind of popping up in the United States. Ironically, actually, I was about to start another business venture, which we could dive into later if we want. But really, the whole concept of QR code scanning was very interesting. I know that there was a lot of innovation in that field, and my background, I've done a lot of international trade. I worked with equipment manufacturers around the world, and saw kind of a appetite for charging, especially with this whole TikTok generation coming to be. And really, I just saw it as a perfect synergy to kind of take this IoT QR code scanning concept and bring it to chargeFUZE and portable charging.
I love it. So I think that's a great introduction to chargeFUZE. Portable charging, who are you exactly? And what's this problem that you're solving?
So essentially the concept, again, picture any type of like city bike or bird scooter concept. You download an app, you can see stations anywhere in your city. Right now, we're in almost 40 states around the country, and we're going to be international as well soon. But the concept is you go to a kiosk, you find a kiosk, you scan a QR code, out pops this portable charger with all 3 charging functionalities. So you can charge any device. You take it on the go, and you drop it off at any station in your network. So when you're going to a Lakers game at Crypto.com Arena, scan it, take it, and you could drop it off at your local bar when you're done. So that's the whole concept.
I have a lot of questions. Yeah,
we do have a lot of questions. Before we get into those questions, however, let's go ahead and introduce the topic of today's show as chosen by Brandon,
which is hyperscaling an IoT-based consumer tech company. With IoT at the intersection of both hardware and software, what does it take to scale this type of business nationally in a short time span? So please start.
Hyperscaling an IoT-based, it's a tongue twister. No, it's like
a little bit.
No, it's very interesting. I mean, when you're dealing with our type of product, it really is at the intersection of hardware and software. So, it's not as simple as just like pushing some sort of online software platform and then just getting users. There's a whole dynamic associated with it, especially because what we're doing is we're creating an industry, and we're also creating a marketplace. So you need network to make this work, right? So people could pick up and drop off. There's much more operational infrastructure involved in it. But also too, there's a lot more hurdles that you have to go through, because being an IoT, the Internet of Things, right? It's you're talking about a network of devices, and it's really like the ability to kind of, gather data and have people interface with the product in a very automated, fashion. So there's a lot of nuance to it. Again, you're dealing with hardware product, you're dealing with operational pieces, you're dealing with software pieces, and everything has to work in order for you to scale.
Exactly. There's not this, I think there is this fail fast mentality, because that's what it takes to stay competitive. But at the same time, like, failure is not quite an option. Like, it has to work, or there's going to be some major problems here.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
So So let's just talk a little bit about now scaling rapidly or short time span. You mentioned that chargeFUZE is available in 40 states within the United States. And what type of a time span are we talking about that you were able to roll out to nearly the entire country?
So it really was this past year. So in about 12 months, we were in about it's a handful of states, and now we're gearing up towards 40, and then we're already talking about international markets too. So very, very quickly, this really happened in the last, you could say, 16 months or so.
Well, that's fascinating. And from like a business standpoint, of course, we don't want to share any major secret sauces here, but what were some of the things that you took into consideration in terms of rollout or locations that you're wanting to try? What did that look like? Some of your discoveries.
No. So I think the way we actually kind of handle our rollout too is really, especially in the very early stages, our product, because it could kind of be anywhere, right? It could be in a casino, it could be in a stadium, it could be in a hospital, it could be in a restaurant, a bar, you name it. Because there's so many applications, I think the goal was to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, so that when it comes to scale, you don't have to worry about like what works and what doesn't work. You could kind of take what you learned in, as an example, in a market like Los Angeles or a market like Texas, San Antonio, you name it, and really try to mimic it in other cities across the country. So getting key learnings as quickly as possible is definitely the name of the game, so that when you accelerate growth, you're able to translate that very, very quickly and easily as well.
I have a question. In terms of operations, how do you prevent these devices from being stolen?
Good question. So essentially, when you interface with the product, okay, whether you're on the app or you're scanning the QR code, you are going through an onboarding process, similar to like, again, a city bike or an Uber. You enter your credit card information. So when someone's actually renting the power bank, if they end up keeping the power bank, they get charged a flat fee. But the thing is that these power banks, you could charge them at home as well. So it's as if you bought a power bank for $35, $40, basically.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Is there like a time frame, a window that you have, like 48 hours to return it, or it's like a library card or something?
It's exactly what it is. And generally speaking, the models vary across different sectors, but it's different cities. But really, it's about 48 hours you have to return the device. And we do have some forgiveness associated too. So if you return it later on, we'll give credits and whatnot as well.
All right. One of my questions too, I mean, I think I see this now with the power bank, but as we go through a lot of different security trainings and things here at Ancora, the sponsor of dojolive, or other places, I hear a lot about like, don't use USB drives, juice jacking is this real thing. It's a danger, viruses, etc. What about in terms of security? How safe is it to use something like this?
Yeah, so just, so our whole product is end to end. It's a very closed system. So a lot of times when you talk about like juice jacking, like at airports as an example, a lot of people will like plug their phone in and have no idea like where it's even connected to. So they don't even know what's happening. Whereas with our devices, everything is built in, right? So we're actually the most secure product out there. So it's never been a worry or problem for us. If anything, it's actually kind of a selling point when we work with the bigger, airport groups and whatnot as well.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. And just going back to the Genesis, my question is, what was this aha moment for you? I mean, did you find yourself up Crap Creek without a paddle because you didn't have a charger, or what's the draw?
It's funny, by the way. I think there's the aha moment was more so it was the combination, again, in 2018, 2019, like this whole concept of like shared products, right? Scooters, right? I mean, it really was spurring up. So I think like for me, the aha moment was like, what is like something that has like there's an actual deep need for, and more than anything
everyone
else,
uses it.
and exactly, it's applicable to everybody. And I think that the way you look at, like, for example, a power bank, I don't know about you, but before chargeFUZE, I had 15 power banks at home, and every single one would be dead. So you have to remember to charge it. You have to bring it with you. You have to worry about, carrying it around. So it's almost like a nuisance. Whereas like the whole model like, we're trying to pitch, and the reason why that this aha moment came to be is that nobody really wants to worry about bringing a power bank, and everybody needs their phone charged. So the whole concept is that like if for a buck or $2 you could get a full charge, that's like a win-win for everybody. So the aha moment was just really understanding the market, seeing kind of the tech where it stood, and again back in 2018, and just seeing where you could apply the tech to more innovative use cases. As an example, chargers.
And it
So,
makes a lot of sense because one, it's like, gosh, I forgot my charger and now, or I have to remember my charger and I have to remember my power bank too. So it
Yeah.
makes sense, but you still get the portability of it. Like you mentioned, going to a stadium, for
we
example.
always say we're a win-win product, right? Meaning that obviously for any user, it makes complete sense. And then also when you think of bars and restaurants, no bartender wants to worry about charging someone's phone. It's like, it's the number one, I mean, every bartender will complain about this. So, and to top it all off too, like, look, when you talk about like stadiums or shopping centers, I mean, if we're keeping consumers there longer, I'm sure if you're at 5% battery and you're at, a Westfield mall, you're going to want to go home because you don't want to worry about having a dead phone. So, we really do view ourselves as a win-win product, both for obviously the business and also for, the end user that's using the charger.
For sure.
What about your users? I know, for example, there are kids that they already have a tablet. They are like 7, 8, 10, right? So do you need to be an adult to have this software? So as a mom, I could tell my kid that, yes, you can take one of those devices and charge your devices. Am I making sense? So
Go for it.
do you need to be an adult to have the software, or you could be a kid? Because they have the access for the credit card to pay the service, right?
So from an age standpoint, it's not an issue in terms of can adults or kids use it, especially because again, when you compare ourselves to a scooter concept as an example, there's a lot more liability associated with that. And if anything too, like our use case actually, especially with the youngsters that are 13 to 17 years old, there's sometimes even a bigger use case because again, they're running around making their TikToks and Instagram reels and whatnot. So but really, we hit the whole range. I think that's what's so interesting about our product. It's like whether you're 50 years old or whether you're 20 years old or 10 years old or 15 years old, there is an application use case for it.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's get back to this idea of IoT, the intersection of hardware and software, and the scaling side. I guess my question is, I think the use cases for your product makes tons of sense. Let's talk from the business standpoints in terms of who your market is. So we mentioned stadiums, we mentioned shopping malls, airports. How are you going about creating this network?
So I think the beauty of our product is that when you're working with something that has such a need, not to say that it's always an easy yes, but generally speaking, I mean, every location wants us. So in terms of kind of who we're targeting, like I hate to say, but it really is everybody. So it is every coffee shop, it is every restaurant, it is every bar. So it's kind of endless. As it relates to kind of the scale factor, I think what's more important to note about scale is not so much about like being everywhere. It's more so about being everywhere correctly. And I say that both from like a product operation standpoint, making sure you're prepared, and also the second point would be more so from just overall market penetration standpoint and like what your goals are with, as an example, targeting New York City. You don't want to just sprinkle a few there and see what happens. You want to target the market correctly and build that network correctly as well. So it's a combination of a few things, but scaling correctly I think is the most important thing, rather than just scaling in a haphazard manner. And that's the way we've kind of pride ourselves in terms of how we're kind of approaching the US market and all these locations that want our product. Is we got to scale correctly more than anything else.
Makes a lot of sense. And what does this look like physically? Because in my mind, I've got like some clunky like ATM looking machine where you scan and you pop in a card, and then a vending machine, I don't know, where the chargeFUZE pops out. I mean, does that exist? And then there's also just the simple, hey bartender, can I scan a code and give me a chargeFUZE? Like, what does this look like?
Great question. So we actually have a few product types. We have a countertop station that's designed for again, restaurants and bars. They could put it out. It's a 5-unit station, 5 batteries inside. Someone could scan a QR code, be done with it. Very, very, very small form factor. We have another larger standalone station that's also designed for bar locations, which is like a 15-unit station. It's about 4.5 feet tall. And then our larger stations, I'd say, like, think, if you ever go to like any shopping center and you see those like directories in a way, right? Those large screen directories where it shows like, what stores there are in the shopping center. Our largest station really, in a way, looks like that. And all stations have screens on there as well. So, so it's a very sleek looking product too. As far as we've seen, every single location has absolutely loved the aesthetic of it. And our whole goal is to really give this, I hate comparing ourselves to another company, but like an Apple-esque kind of vibe. where we are obviously premier, and the product obviously looks good too, right? It's in a
Mhm.
location, and it does
Mhm.
matter that in a location, wants it there as well.
Sleek
So
and clean.
yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly,
I'm
exactly.
imagining, when you walk into any venue and you've got like MasterCard, American Express stickers on the doors, there's a little chargeFUZE sticker as well. Like, hey, there's a station here. Is that what it
We actually, it's funny, we're doing that in Texas as we speak right now. So yeah, we do have the whole Windows sticker approach that everyone's been doing in the past.
And
is?
in turn, I'm sorry, Kim. Do you
No,
have a
go
question?
ahead. No, go ahead.
In terms of sustainability, do you think that there is going to be the possibility with these devices, these batteries, to be powered by solar energy? Is this something that you are working on, or what is the kind of energy that you utilize?
First of all, great question, and I always love the sustainability concept, because it's so interesting too. Like, one of the things we pride ourselves in is, rather than people buying power banks, throwing them out, having a graveyard of power banks, the first piece I want to talk about is the beauty is that this is reused in a way, right? So that concept is already sustainable in and of itself.
Like a library.
Exactly, exactly. So and then in terms of kind of innovative tech and what we want to do, there's a lot of in terms of our roadmap, we have a lot of ideas in terms of how we want to be more sustainable. A few things that are kind of in our roadmap for end of this year going into next year. So there are a few concepts and ideas that we have in our arsenal that we plan to kind of capitalize on as the year goes on.
Cool. Let's get back to this region idea. So you brought up Texas, you've brought up Los Angeles. I've only been to LA and really only the Disneyland portion of it, unfortunately. Texas, I've never been, but it doesn't take, Sherlock Holmes to realize that they're two very different places. How do you go about designing or figuring out how to scale in terms of regionality or differences? Have you seen difference in behaviors or this adaptability that you have to account for?
It's funny I always give LA as a bad example in a way, because every place, every
I
market
feel like if
has
it's going to work in LA, it's going to work
no,
everywhere.
the thing is that every market really does they have their own personality. San Antonio has a personality, New York has a personality, LA has a personality. And I think what's so funny about it is that LA is the hardest personality to deal with. Okay, meaning that locations, I mean, they overly care about what's inside their business or their restaurant or their bar. And New York is somewhat similar in a way too. Whereas Texas, there's a lot more, I'd say, openness to new products and new innovation within their locations. So, it is interesting. You really have to work around it. I think first and foremost, the goal is to understand that personality, so you could kind of level expectations, especially for people that you're hiring in the respective markets. But it is funny. I will tell you, without a doubt, every city has a different personality, and it is very noticeable, very, very noticeable.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another question, but I don't know how old is this port. For example, this one.
USB-C, I think we called it the baby USB.
I think that is the newest port, right?
USB-C, yes, correct.
And how old is the company?
So we've been around. Inception was about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. So you already started the company with people utilizing this port, for example.
Yeah. So how we built it, I don't know if I guess I should have showed you guys better, but they're built in with all three charging functionalities. So you could charge any device. So we already basically had that in mind, especially with USB-C being the newest port. But America, you could go ahead. I cut you off.
No, I was going to ask that how difficult, but it's not the case. It will be to add another port to all the devices around the country. How is that process? Or is that something that you're planning? Or, well, I don't know if there is a new port.
He's like, I guess it's not up to you. It just depends on what device manufacturers go with. But I think, please, God, no.
No.
I think all of us can uniquely say, why can devices not get on board and have a universal
universal
port?
port? I know. No. Well, the good thing is that USB-C is the newest, and it's the one that everyone's going to be gradually transitioning over to. For us, that was our biggest hedge when we built these out, right? Is to make sure that USB-C was incorporated. And then apart from that, I mean, everything is based on planning and preparation. So nothing happens overnight, especially in the tech space, and especially with these larger companies. So generally speaking, as long as we're prepared, our ability to adapt isn't too difficult, right? Whether it's changing power banks and so on and so forth. But it's all about having a pulse on what's happening with the tech. so that, the discussions you have, it's, oh, this change is happening next week, we got to react all of a sudden. No, it's very much like, okay, we have a 12-month roadmap into getting to where we want to be, and now we execute. So I'd say preparation is the most important part.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it brings us back again to this intersection of hardware, software. In terms of scaling and in terms of rollout, what has your decision been on like manufacturing side or the developing side? Are you keeping this in-house? Are you doing this, with partners? And if so, how do you go about choosing those partners? What does that look like for you in terms of being able to achieve this rapid growth?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is we really aligned ourselves with our manufacturer from an exclusivity front, and then apart from that too, we also made sure that like we had a lot of control end to end. So from the software that's on the stations all the way to our whole backend system, all the way to the actual app that people are using, we had full control and handle in terms of how we built everything. And that was very important also because when you talk about new innovations and new product, if you don't have control over what you've built, your ability to actually bring out new ideas or new innovations or new solutions, it's going to be a big hurdle for you to go through the learning curves all over again. So it was very important that we had control end to end, and it was with the intention, obviously, of just our ability to innovate quickly.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So let's bring this back to you, Brandon, as an individual and sort of your lessons learned in this. You've co-founded chargeFUZE. You had different ventures and previous to this as well. But what would you say is your biggest words of wisdom for individuals like you who are either in it or looking to be in it in terms of entrepreneurship and founding a company? What works and really what doesn't?
It's funny. I feel like every year there's like a different lesson that I hone in on. Right? I think like last year or 2 years ago for me, it was really jumping into the unknown. I think that's a very important thing that every entrepreneur should do, and you can't be afraid of it. But I'd say more so now because understanding like where I'm at now, and I remember where I was as like a 22-year-old that didn't know much and is just trying to learn everything as well. I think what's important to note is that like there is like no difference between the people that like built the greatest companies and yourself. There really isn't. And I think what happens, people build these barriers for themselves, thinking that, oh, this person's here and they must be this and I'm not this, and because of that they create this distance and this gap. Whereas the quicker you start realizing like there's no difference between yourself and Jeff Bezos or yourself and an Elon Musk, that confidence helps you push to create new things with I'd say with a lot more rigor, and also again going back to with a lot more confidence too.
Is that a philosophy that you share with the people that work at your company?
Honestly, yes. I completely do. I'm never looking at another again behemoth that's already out there, thinking to myself like, oh, are we like less than them? Are we lower than them? If anything, I think to myself that our company, Fuse Technology, chargeFUZE, like we are equals, and we have the capability of getting to wherever any other company was able to get to. So yeah.
But perhaps that is the difference, between individuals like Jeff Bezos and yourself, or we can do it. There is no difference. I think, because I think it makes you different thinking that there's no difference, right? And I don't know if I'm making sense, to sort of catch 22, but I think it's really great to have this mentality.
No, yeah.
If everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, we think, I think, that's great. In terms of company culture, what are you building with your individuals? What do you hold tried and true as you grow together?
I'd say what I tell everybody that joins the company and everyone that's at the company is that this company isn't me. It's not the stakeholders. The company is everybody. And what that means is I think it's so rare to find a company that can scale so quickly. And I say that because a company that scales so quickly will educate you very in a way like no other company. You could work at Goldman Sachs or Deloitte and whatnot, but I mean we're talking about like hyper growth within 2 years, getting an educational experience that is the equivalent of 20 years for most people. So I tell everybody, and the whole culture is you have to strive to innovate. Okay, meaning everybody has to talk about ideas. The second we stop innovating, we're no longer the company that we set out to be. Okay, that's number one. And I'd say number two is really, this is the opportunity to build I want everyone to be selfish with their own careers. Okay. I want everybody to say, you know what, I have the chance to do this at chargeFUZE. Be selfish, right? Make your career out of what chargeFUZE is about to become. because the goal is in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if I have my directors or my VPs leaving and doing other things, I'm okay with that because I know that they help build this next, big company that everybody talks about and knows about. So,
Nice.
I want people to build their careers and I want people to have that innovation back of mind as well.
Yeah, I think that's a real win-win mentality, right? I think it's a trap I think that many leaders fall into is like not wanting to support their people out of fear of having them leave. But at the same time, while they're with you, when you are supporting them, you're benefiting from that much more than you would with a fear kind of based tactic. Talking about fear and just the current, environment that we're all in with recession and all of this pending doom. What's your perspective on that, and how are you sort of keeping up and helping not only your team but your stakeholders and everyone push through? I think in terms of market, you're well positioned. I mean, in terms of recession, everyone's interested in only spending $1, right, for a power. Oh my God,
Power bank.
Thank you. I'm like, I had a complete brain fart there. Power bank versus having to buy one when you're in a scenario. So I think that's good. But how are you handling this overall fear and tension that we all seem to be feeling?
So what's interesting? It's funny. We have these like discussions now too, like in preparation for like, oh, what might happen in quarter 2, what might happen in quarter 3. I think like the good thing with our company, I'd say, is that like we definitely are capturing like a necessity in a way too. Like when people's phones are dead, like they need the service, they need the product, they will use us. But more so, I think what's important to note is like the strategy we're taking on is very different than most tech companies. And I say that because a lot of tech companies out there, I do think we're going to go through like a different world of venture capital and a different world of tech altogether. In the last 10 years, if you were starting a company, I mean, it was you're just raising, your valuations keep going up, and it never mattered what the unit economics of your business ever looked like because you could just raise the capital to survive longer. That literally was like the last 10 years because debt was cheap and market was going up and everything was dandy. But I do think we're going to go through a different time. I think that venture capital money is going to dry up, and I think that look, we're eyeing potentially future raises, but I think our whole goal is to treat ourselves as a business first. It's not this fantasy world of tech where it's all about the money doesn't matter and you just grow and you don't look at like the basis of what you're building. And I think we've done a very good job with that. And I think that our strategy is what's going to kind of get us over this hump. Whatever happens in quarter 2, quarter 3, because we do have a strategy that is predicated on building a sustainable business more than anything else. So to your point, again, I do think that a lot of tech companies out there, they throw that out the door. They throw all business common sense out the door just because there's access to capital. Whereas I'm doing it the other way around, where we might raise capital, but I also want to make sure that our business doesn't need it, right? We're not asking for it, right? It's a sustainable business in and of itself.
Yeah, and going back, I think, to just the way, the company culture and the way you're supporting your individuals, when you position yourself that way as a business, the idea, I think, is if you build it, they will come, right? The investors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very, very cool. Well, Brandon, it has been a pleasure to learn from you today, to learn about your story and the chargeFUZE story, what you're building. I think it's an excellent product. I appreciate it on so many levels. First and foremost, for me, it's the ecological one. I think the less trash that we're throwing out into the planet, the better. And then the innovative side of using tech to figure out how to do that. So thank you very much. We wish you and chargeFUZE nothing but success.
Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. Hang on just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, we'd like to remind you to join us on Monday for our recap show, as we talk all about Brandon's show as well as yesterday's show with Seth, and give you our tidbits there and introduce what we've got coming up next week as well. That will be at 10 o'clock Pacific, as always, right here on Dojo Live. Thank you again, Brandon, and thank you, America.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye, guys.